Super Mario Bros. 3. It's only the best 2D Mario game hands down. It's always nice to go back to this one from time to time, but let's play it a different way. The goal today is to avoid touching every single block. And when I say blocks, that means I won't be able to land or jump on brick blocks, question mark blocks, or ice blocks. The only thing I'm allowed to do involving the blocks is to break them with a Tanuki tail or Koopa shell. I can also skip levels if I need to, but by the end of this, I'll have attempted every level. I personally feel like this challenge will be a brutal one, so let's get on with it. My first realization was that power-ups might be tricky to come by. Most of them come out of question mark blocks, so that sucks right off the bat. Moving on though, there's this long slab of blocks that I have to avoid, and unfortunately, I kept landing on them near the end. I kept trying this with more speed, but I just wasn't able to get fast enough. So my next idea was to bring a Koopa shell with me to destroy some blocks that are in the way. This plan actually works pretty well, but after a few seconds, I wasn't breaking the final block. After dying to the shell, I realized I needed to be closer to the right side of the screen. What's annoying about retrying this level was I kept killing the plants by accident. It was just the worst. After a few more tries, I eventually broke through the barrier and cleared the level. That wasn't too bad, but I feel like this is gonna get a lot harder. 1-2 seemed impossible at first since you're supposed to use this question mark block to reach this pipe, but with a very precise Goomba jump, you can just barely cling to the edge of the pipe. The rest of the level was easy peasy. Next was 1-3, and it only had one tricky part. I needed to clear this segment of blocks by using the music block in Paratroopa. After a couple tries, I pulled this off. I also decided to kneel on this white block so I could get access to the warp whistle. I'm gonna try to get all three since I may need them to beat this game at all. For fun, I tried out 1-4 even though it's optional, and wasn't having any luck. With some practice, I got close to touching the platform without using the blocks in the middle, but I knew I would need a Tanuki to reach it. I double-checked the map, and sure enough, it would definitely be possible with a Tanuki, so let's just mark this with a yellow circle instead. After that was one tower, and there were literally 2 or 3 bricks in the whole level, so it was a cakewalk. One thing that sucked was that since I didn't have a Tanuki tail anymore, I couldn't go for the second warp whistle, so I hope I don't need it later. Thankfully, 1-5 was super easy considering I didn't spot any blocks. Now 1-6 had one jump where I had to bounce off this Paratroopa, but otherwise it was painless. I hit up a mushroom house hoping to get a Tanuki leaf, only to receive a fire flower. The fire flower was useful for the Hammer Bro fight, but I really want to get those Tanuki leaves since they're much more practical in most levels. And wow, we have already made it to one airship. We're sailing pretty smooth so far. The level itself has a couple of blocks, but after taking out the Koopaling, we are finished with World 1. There's another warp whistle to find in World 2, so let's see if we can nab it. The first few seconds for 2-1 looked completely hopeless. There was a giant pile of bricks in front of me with no way around. But then, a pile driver Micro Goomba hopped towards me, and I knew I could use them to my advantage. With some careful jumping, I managed to get myself across by bouncing off these enemies. After that, I used a Koopa shell to smack this brick to reveal a Tanuki tail. Ah, it's nice to have one again. Up next was 2-2, and this was fine for a little bit. After riding this platform though, there were columns of bricks I knew would be tricky to avoid, so I opted to dive into the water. I had to very carefully swim around the Cheep Cheep so I wouldn't lose my suit, but I managed to do so and clear the level. Following that was 2 Tower, and it has one block to avoid, and that's it. The only notable thing to mention is the fight with the Boomerang Bro. I somehow went completely through the boomerang without getting hit, and I have no idea why. I guess the hitboxes are wonky or something, but man, that was so lucky. After that was 2-3, and I knew I was in some trouble. And that's when I ran into this giant staircase of blocks, but I had the Tanuki tail and had an idea. I built up some speed earlier on and managed to fly clean across the staircase. That wasn't the problem though. It was all about the end of the stage. I had absolutely no way of clearing all these blocks, so I thought I'd try using a Koopa shell. I threw it in the air, but honestly, I knew it wouldn't be able to reach the end on time without the Koopa flipping back over. My last idea before using the warp whistle was trying out the P-Wing. I feel so dumb using an elite power-up on such an easy level, but I kinda have to. I got to the end and first tried flying over the blocks, which didn't work at all. So then I very carefully flew down and hit the Koopa. I hit him again at just the right spot so I didn't touch the ground while also avoiding the shell. Now I had to double check my footage to ensure I didn't hit the ground, and sure enough, I only skimmed the Koopa. Let me just say, doing this was absolutely terrifying, and after that maneuver, I just had to wait for the shell to knock out the blocks. Carefully flying into the pipe without touching a block, I somehow beat this level. Holy cannoli, that's all I gotta say. Afterwards was the sand or angry sun level, and it wasn't that bad. There were some blocks that I had to make jumps over, but really, I just had to float across and I was pretty good. On to our next mushroom house, I got... another fire flower? Come on, man, I'm so sick of getting these. Well, anyway, moving on to 2-4, I had to jump over this one question mark block, and the others were all easy to avoid. Next, it was time to take out the hammer bro. This was particularly important because he gives us the hammer item. With this, we can break the rock and reveal a hidden area of World 2. The following 2 fire bros have exactly what we want, a warp whistle. I tried the next mushroom house, and after so many bad item spawns in the other houses, I was hoping that this would be better. But nope, I got a frog suit, because why not, right? But going back to the levels, 2-5 was nothing short of a cakewalk. And 2 Pyramid was all well, except for the beginning. Up these 3 stairs is 3 blocks and a question mark block, and the only way you can clear them is with a super precise jump. I built up a fragment of speed to be able to clear this, and also hit the Buzzy Beetle and caught it without losing my suit. How all that happened, I don't know, it was all reflexes, alright? After that though was 2 Airship. And like the previous Airship, there's almost no blocks to worry about. And just like that, we move on to World 3. The first level was super simple with only a couple of blocks to bypass, and 3-2 was pretty solid as well. At the end, there's a bunch of blocks I have to dodge, and the only way I could do it was the damage boost through the Piranha Plant. Here's to hoping I can get another Tanuki tail soon. Oh, and speak of the devil, I'm kinda mad I don't have the Tanuki tail because I have no way to pass all these blocks. I tried running as fast as possible and bouncing off the music block, but even then I didn't come close. This level would be possible if I had a P-Wing, but I'm all out of those sadly. So instead, I'm resorting to using my cloud item to pass through 3-3 and just move on. 3 Tower thankfully didn't have any blocks, so it was a breeze to knock out. With 3-4, I had to make a couple of careful jumps around the middle, but it wasn't much trouble beyond that. In 3-5, I ended up getting hit, but it wasn't that big a deal since I could still clear the level with no blocks in sight. I knocked out the Hammer Bros to get another hammer item, and used that to access 3 mushroom houses. And finally, after so many houses, I got a Tanuki leaf. Jeez, that took long enough. And carrying on to 3-6, it was another simple level. I got hit, but I have some backup power-ups now, so it's no biggie. The same kind of thing goes for 3-7, but there was one scary jump. There's a row of bricks that I can't clear with a jump, so I have to try going underneath. By building speed and sliding, I barely squeezed my way through without touching a block. That was a close one. For 3 Tower 2, the boost stretch floors were annoying, but otherwise this was an easy one. 3-8 is the most challenging Big Bertha level, but with some careful jumping, it wasn't too bad. There's only a handful of blocks to evade. Then we moved on to 3-9, and this one was a touch problematic. First and foremost though, I brought a Koopa shell over to this section to nab us a bunch of lives. That was fine and dandy, but then I got to this wall of bricks I couldn't jump over. I busted out a Tanuki tail and managed to fly to the end, but the only problem is the final pipe is surrounded by a bunch of ice blocks, and Koopas can't break these blocks, so there's seemingly no way around. Or so I thought. By checking the map of the game, I realized you could go down other pipes to go around the blockage. So with Tanuki Mario, I smashed my way through the blocks and went down the pipe. Doing this, I was able to swim through the water and reach the goal. And finally, we made it to the airship, and it was honestly pretty simple. After taking out Wendy O. Koopa, we can proceed to World 4. 4-1 wasn't too shabby. There was a lot of bricks to evade, but it was nothing to sweat over. And beyond this, we actually had an easy streak of levels. These include 4-2, 4-3, 4 Tower, 4-4, and 4-5. The difficulty picks up a bit in 4-6. Firstly, we have to make this super precise jump, which requires us to build some speed to clear this line of blocks. That's the easy one. Next is this giant section of nothing but bricks, which are very easy to land on. But I knew that with enough speed, I could probably bounce off the Koopas and get past everything. After a dozen or so tries, I built up enough speed to bounce off the Koopa on the top platform and barely snag the Para-Koopa, which gave me enough height to clear the entire thing. This legitimately felt like a motorbike jumping over 20 trucks. It was exhilarating as hell. Up next was the second tower, and this one was really stupid. Halfway through, I'm supposed to jump on this block to climb farther up, and there's no way I can get up there. That is, unless I use a P-Wing that I literally just got from the Hammer Bro. So there we go. I'm wasting yet another P-Wing to get past one part of a level. At least it worked and I can move on. And finally, we reach for Airship, and it's an incredibly slow auto-scroller. There's only one block to worry about, and after that, World 4 is done. Moving on to 5-1, this one jump was a little difficult to navigate, but that's about it for this level. For 5-2, I usually like to take this path on the right, but I can't now because it's entirely built on bricks. Lucky for me, there's another route at the bottom. The Buster Beetles were really obnoxious to put up with, so I basically had to be patient and let them throw the ice blocks to clear the path. This level was possible, thankfully. Now, my god, 5-3 was the most annoying level I had to play yet. Since I couldn't get access to the Goomba shoe, the muncher part was kind of a big problem. So I decided that damage boosting across them was my best option, at least until the next pipe. That's because there's a square of blocks I can't jump over, and no matter how many times I tried to squeeze my way through, I just could not clear them. The only solution was to bust out the Tanuki suit and whack the blocks away. 5-3 took a lot of attempts, but it was doable. Now, 5 Tower was a hard level, but the blocks were a non-issue. The second tower was going alright until we got to this section. The entire thing, besides 2 enemies, are made of blocks, which is obviously a big no-no for us. Thankfully, we've got 2 P-Wings at our disposal and can very sneakily fly into the pipe without touching the blocks at all. Next was 5-4, and there was only 1 block, so it was pretty easy. 5-5 was an annoying level, but it's more than doable. Next was 5-6, which was an auto-scroller. After a while, it got to a point where all the platforms were just bricks and I couldn't clear them unless I had a P-Wing. So while this level is technically possible, we have the option of skipping it to try 5-7 instead to preserve our power-ups. But sadly, 5-7 was also giving us a huge problem. There's 2 giant columns of bricks in our path with no easy way to clear them. You can build up speed and jump over them, but then there's another series of blocks that you can't do much about. Looking at the full map of 5-7, you could definitely beat this with a P-Wing, but I only have 1 left. I also have a Cloud, so I decided to use that instead since the P-Wing is more useful in tricky situations. For the third and final tower, I just had to avoid the fireballs, and that was pretty much it. And 5-8 was also pretty simple, as well as 5-9. 5 Airship was another trouble-free level, and with that done, World 5 is a wrap-up. And I gotta say, I'm kinda surprised we haven't used the Warp Whistle yet. But hey, I don't want to jinx myself, so knock on wood. So 6-1 had very little blocks to worry about. There were a few tight jumps to make in 6-2, but it was all good. In 6-3, I had an insanely clutch moment where I was an inch from falling, but it was otherwise a painless level. And 6 Tower was more the same. It wasn't too bad. 6-4 was simple enough, and 6-5 is another level that can be done, but we're not going to complete it. 6-5 requires either a Tanuki or P-Wing to fly up top to the exit, as you can see by this map. Since we can try 6-6 instead, we'll do that to save our power-ups. 6-6 is a slow-paced level, but it's more than possible, and the same can be said for 6-7 as well as 6 Tower 2. 6-8 was interesting because the only way I could get across this small Mario was to let the Beetles throw the bricks so I could get through, and 6-9 was another painless level. 6-10 has a couple tricky jumps, and you have to let the Beetles throw a lot of blocks, but it's otherwise possible. 6 Tower 3 was yet again painless, which means we've moved on to 6 Airship. You know, I always forget how many levels there really are in World 6, it's quite a bunch. But thankfully, the Airship was a walk in the park. It's by far the easiest airship in the game. After knocking that out, we can trench on forward to World 7. 7-1 was not the greatest start. That's because there's no way to get past this vertical jump without a P-Wing. I need at least 1 platform that's made out of blocks. You can do this with a P-Wing by looking at this map, but we're going to use a Cloud instead. 7-2 is another level where we really need the Tanuki suit. There's 2 blocks on top of this pipe, and no matter how many times I try, I always barely touch the blocks. This is yet another one that could be done, but instead I'm going to use a Cloud to pass 7-2 and just move on. 7 7-3 is yet another level that requires the P-Wing. There's a large jump at the beginning, and I can't reach it without touching the blocks. Now, I do have 2 P-Wings at my disposal, but I really want to have these for World 8. But I guess I have no choice since I'm out of clouds. Thankfully, 7-4 was much more manageable than the other World 7 levels. Now, 7-5 is interesting because this is actually the first level that will be impossible. That's because we're required to hit invisible blocks to make progress, and those count as blocks, so there's nothing we can do. Thankfully, this level is optional, but it's honestly mind-boggling that this was the first unbeatable level. It took until World 7 to get to this point. But within the first glimpse of 7 Tower, it's impossible because the entire level is blocks. Well, this first room is at least, but not even a P-Wing can save us here. The last thing we can try is 7 Plant. This is a hard level, but with patience, you can do it without touching a single block. And what's really nice is you get a free P-Wing after completing it. But our dilemma now is that we're at a dead end. We can't use a P-Wing to clear 7 Tower, and I'm fresh out of clouds. That means it's time to finally use the Warp Whistle, which takes us to World 8. This has been a long and treacherous journey, so let's see if we can finish this challenge off strong. First up was 8 Tank, and there was only one block that I needed to avoid. 8 Battleship was more the same thing, except the level is slightly harder. Next was the hand traps, and I luckily only needed to play the last one. This level had next to no blocks in my path, and I was able to nab a free Tanuki leaf as well. While 8 Airship was really challenging, there's no blocks to worry about. And then came 8-1. I tried it with Fire Mario and had no success getting over this pipe, so by building some speed with my Tanuki leaf, I managed to fly right over it. The rest of the level was really challenging, but the blocks weren't in the way that much. 8-2 was particularly scary because the level was flooded with fire piranha plants as well as the angry sun, but if you play it carefully, it's more than possible. And here we go, 8 Tower. This level is defined as pure evil. Not only is it insanely confusing, but the blocks are so ridiculous to avoid. I had to start by swiping my tail at this H to remove some of the blocks while also avoiding the radioactive waffle. After barely managing to do that, I needed to do the same on the other side. The only problem is there is an invisible block all the way to the right, so I have to make sure to not hit that while also avoiding the waffle. Next, I have to perfectly jump off the dry bones while avoiding the waffle just to smack the side of the block to reveal the P-switch. Then when it came to actually hitting the switch, it required a running start, a frame-perfect jump off this gray circle while achieving maximum height, floating so I can barely hit the P-switch while also not hitting the block underneath and the waffle. I don't even know if hitting this P-switch was worth my time, but my god, I was so frustrated at this point. I eventually got to the end of the level only to realize my run was over. I needed to hit the second P-switch, but the only way to do that was to break the block, which obviously defeats the purpose of this challenge. So is it possible to beat Super Mario Bros. 3 without touching a block? Maybe. Based on the choices and items I have, I can't technically complete this run anymore, but I theoretically could still keep going. Let's go back to World 5-7. I ended up skipping that stage with a cloud, but I also had a P-Wing in my inventory. If I had simply used the P-Wing for 5-7 instead of the cloud, I would still have one cloud left, which means I could have theoretically used that cloud to skip 8 Tower. So for the sake of this challenge, let's keep on going and see if it's possible. At this point, I've got 2 P-Wings left with only 2 levels, so I just ended up using one on 8 Tank 2. It was really nice to have after 8 Tower, I needed a bit of a breather. But this is it everyone, the final level in the game. 1 P-Wing left, and 1 stupid idea for Bowser's fight. In fact, the entirety of this video exists because I had this idea several months ago where I wondered if you could beat Bowser without touching the bricks at all. So it was my time to finally test this theory. I got to the first room and then... Wait a minute, there's an invisible wall? Okay, so apparently Bowser only spawns when you touch the ground. This is actually an interesting problem, because these blocks don't look like the normal blocks we're trying to avoid, but they can also be destroyed. So does it count if I touch them once just to spawn Bowser? I did so anyway because I've been wanting to try this dumb idea for a while now. At first, Bowser landed on the left side without breaking anything, so I knew I needed to play riskier. I quickly learned that Bowser tends to jump after spitting 2 fireballs, so I jumped at just the right time so Bowser would ground pound on top of bricks, but I also had enough speed to get out of the way. This strategy wasn't perfect though. He did hit these bricks on this jump, but I wasn't close enough for him to ground pound. Another careful jump though, and he smashed another brick. And another, and another, and another, and another, and going once, and going twice, and sold! Miraculously! Besides spawning in Bowser, you can take him out without touching the bricks even one time. So is it possible to beat Super Mario Bros. 3 without touching a single block? Yeah! But maybe no if you consider the final fight to not count. Now before wrapping things up, let's try out the levels from World 7 that we didn't get to because of the warp whistle. 7-6 is pretty slow going, but is definitely possible. Next was 7-7, and there is no way we can complete this one. The gimmick for this level is to keep hitting the question mark block because they have stars inside, but obviously we can't do that. I got pretty far with the Tanuki suit by just flying across half the level, but eventually I had to damage boost and couldn't make much more progress. You could use a P-Wing on this level technically, but we're just gonna move on. 7-8 is a super obnoxious level, but you can complete it. For 7-9, you immediately start by standing on blocks, so you definitely cannot beat this level. Even with a P-Wing, you still have to jump off the blocks before flying. 7 Tower 2 is another tough level, but there's almost no blocks to avoid. And next is 7 Plant 2, and I had one spare P-Wing, so I decided I might as well use it here. And for the final level, 7 Airship was a piece of cake. But then of course there's the secret world, World A. Wait, what? You've never heard of World A? Yeah, if you beat the entire game in 15 minutes using only the frog suit, you unlock this really cool world. Nobody ever brings up World Audible. It's kinda strange. I mean, it's only the best place to get your audiobook fill, but they don't just have thousands of titles. You can also listen to podcasts, wellness programs, A-list comedy, and Audible originals you won't find anywhere else. And have I mentioned the app is free and can be listened to across devices without losing your spot? I mean, talk about handy. Now, personally, I've been listening to Super Mario: How Nintendo Conquered America, and it's been really great while working on YouTube videos. So with all that said, make sure to visit audible.com/Nathaniel or text Nathaniel at 500-500. And a big thanks to Audible for sponsoring this video. So, I am stunned with how many levels were actually possible. The final tally is 84 out of 88 levels that can be completed without touching a block. That is simply crazy to me considering how common and iconic this Mario asset is. But I think that's enough for today. I hope you all enjoyed this video and thanks a bunch for watching. I'll speak with you all very soon and have a great day.